cats and kittens, and thanks for tuning in to another episode of the MonkeyBoy Presents the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss. And today I'm happy to bring you issue number 116 in the series, Negative Man. And this is one of only 5 figures left in the series, the final member of the Doom Patrol, so I'm really happy that Eaglemoss and DC managed to finish out that team. There are only 3 key members, so it wasn't too hard, at least I'd like to think it wasn't. Also, I have a change in quality you might have noticed with my camera here. I got a brand new webcam for Christmas, so I've been playing around with that, which is another reason why this issue took a little longer than I wanted it to. Anyway, with that out of the way, if you are familiar with the very cool hero that is Negative Man, chances are you've seen him in his first appearance that I'm aware of outside of the comic books on the animated Teen Titans series, where there was an episode they explored Beast Boy's background a little bit and explained that he was once a part of a team called the Doom Patrol, where we see all of those characters. He also more recently appeared on an episode of Batman the Brave and the Bold, along with other members of the Doom Patrol. I think he appeared in a couple of shorts on that one too, at the very start of the episodes. They'd have short little things. Anyway, with all that out of the way, if you are unfamiliar with the hero known as Negative Man, that of course is why we have the magazine, which we'll take a look at first, and it'll tell you everything you need to know about former test pilot Larry Trainor turned radioactive superhero, and then we'll look at the figure itself, covering the good, the bad, and the ugly. Another really cool figure, a cool character. I hope you sit back, relax, and enjoy issue number 116 of the DC Comics Superhero Collection by Eaglemoss, Negative Man. First up, the character section. Where we meet All-American hero and hotshot test pilot for the United States Air Force, Larry Trainor. Larry has been selected to be the first to pilot the brand new military space shuttle codenamed the K-2F. As Larry prepared to break through the magnetosphere, something happened to the rocket, causing it to explode and go out of control. Trainor received a massive dose of radiation and blacked out as the craft plummeted back towards the Earth. Although he was recovered, Larry's body was still dosed with high levels of radiation, and he was forced to wear specially created medical gauze that Dr. Calder had provided to him. Larry was also forced into early retirement from his test piloting job. It was then that Larry began to secretly experiment with his newfound powers, discovering that he could fly at the speed of light, was given super strength, and was also nearly indestructible. It was after an encounter with a villain known as Dr. Death that Larry was approached by Niles Calder once more, who invited him to join a new group that he had founded called the Doom Patrol, made up of 2 other human beings with special gifts. The wisecracking hotshot found that he blended in very well with Rita Farr, also known as Elastigirl, and Cliff Steele, also known as Robot Man, as the trio fought against many of the most unique villains in the DC universe, including the electrified villain known as the Brain, 2 more over-the-top villains like Animal, Vegetable, Mineral Man. After years of fighting crime together, the original Doom Patrol was seemingly destroyed by the likes of Captain Zal and the evil Madame Rouge. Soon after this, a second Doom Patrol came on the scene, with new team members, including Valentina Vostok, who called herself Negative Woman. It was eventually revealed the negative energy that was inside of Cliff's body had left in the explosion that had seemingly killed the team, and entered into Valentina's body after her ship had crash-landed there. The new Doom Patrol also discovered that Larry had somehow survived the explosion, but that his body was trapped in a coma. Larry had finally learned the truth, that the negative energy contained within him was actually an alien entity known as Rebus. Having been both a man and a woman, Rebus now wanted to experience a hermaphroditic form, and he recruited Larry and a woman known as Eleanor to become the new form of Negative Man. Somehow, Trainer had survived once more, and eventually learned from Dr. Niles Calder, aka the Chief, the truth. Calder had managed to keep him alive all these years by replacing his body. Larry's original body was destroyed in the explosion that happened at the hands of Madame Rouge. Calder managed to clone bodies that would accept the negative energy by using cadavers that he had spliced with Larry's own DNA. Eagerly rejoined his old teammates on the Doom Patrol once more when they headed out to Oolong Island. While there, the Blackest Night occurred, and they ended up taking on evil Black Lantern versions of the dead members of the different incarnations of the Doom Patrol. Shortly after this, they learned the truth about Dr. Niles Calder, the Chief, and how he had been manipulating them and using them for decades. The Doom Patrol rallied and eventually stopped their one-time mentor by using powers some of them didn't even know they had. And together, Larry Trainer and the other members of the Doom Patrol still fight the bizarre and weird villains in the DCU. Next, we look at a couple of Negative Man's classic stories. First up, we look at Doom Patrol, Crawling from the Wreckage. And this is the series where Larry learns the truth about the Negative Man entity within him, that it's an alien entity, that it calls itself Rebus, and that it has selected both he and a woman known as Eleanor to become its next host. And they become this hermaphroditic form of Negative Man, and it calls itself simply Rebus the entire time. It decides to stay on and serve with the current incarnation of the Doom Patrol, and they fight all sorts of crazy, weird monsters and aliens and things. It's a really wacky, crazy, mind-bending tone that the series takes with this run, and I really think it's a fun one to check out. We also look at Doom Patrol Volume 5, Number 6. And this story culminates with the unraveling, if you will, of Negative Man's origins. The writers of this story did a great job of trying to recount and recalibrate this character's chaotic history, and they did a masterful job of it. It's a really funny, cynical, and even disturbing story that really does help to look more deeply into Larry Trainer and what makes him Negative Man, ending with a really interesting sting that reveals Larry may have actually perished, at least his physical body, in the explosion that they thought had once killed the original Doom Patrol, and he may now only exist as an echo within Negative Man. Negative Man's Friends and Foes section looks at the one-time Negative Woman, Valentina Vostok, and his original teammates on the Doom Patrol, Robot Man and Elastigirl. Finally, the iconography section looks at some of the other intergalactic phenomena that has come from space. It first mentions benevolent interstellar protectors like the Guardians of the Universe and the Watchdogs of Space, who have taken it upon themselves to help safeguard the Earth. We learn of an electrified comet that had once grazed the planet Earth in the 1950s, and it was up to intrepid researcher and astrophysicist Paul Gibson to devise a way to save the planet. It briefly mentions a variation of kryptonite known as red kryptonite. It also mentions temporal anomalies like the one that sent future historian Kristen Wells back from the 29th century, where she used her futuristic technology to become the first Superwoman in Metropolis. It also mentions Langford Terrell, the original Ray, who was struck by lightning in the middle of a solar storm, giving him his incredible superpowers. Lastly, it mentions Gorilla Grodd, who discovered a green radiant haze that was actually a semi-autonomous full immersion teaching system that he called the Green Glob. And here we have Negative Man, also known as Larry Traynor, and I really like this figure. I'm a fan of the Doom Patrol, so I'm really glad they managed to squeeze all three of the original core members into this series before it was finished, and I really like this interpretation of the character. He's in his most modern outfit, which is okay with me, and it's perfectly detailed. It looks exactly as it does in the comic book, all the way down to the Doom Patrol communicator on his belt, which is sort of hidden behind his hand, but it's there if you really look for it. Really, everything about him is very nice. I like the sculpting, I like the paint job, all the details are pretty well done for the most part. There are some things, though, that I'm not so crazy about. One thing being, I think, kind of obvious, maybe, is his pose is a little weird. But overall, there's more good than bad. Of course, I'll talk a little bit more about what I do and don't like in the next section in just a moment. Negative Man stands atop the classic DC logo, and the underside of the base features his name in multiple languages, as well as his serial number. And so you can compare, here he is alongside his teammates on the Doom Patrol. Negative Man, also known as Larry Traynor, is a really good-looking figure. There is far more good than bad here, although the problems I have with the figure, to me, really do stand out. Starting with the good, as always. Mostly, I like him. There's a great sculpt to the guy, lots of fine details. I love the costume they chose to put him in. The coloration is fantastic, the texturing, all of that stuff. He is very impressive for the most part. You can see, starting with the boots at the base of the figure, they're a nice glossy black. They look militaristic. He is in the military after all. He's a former Air Force test pilot. I also like the pants, how they look like flight pants. They remind me of the Rocketeer. As I said before, if you go back and look at that movie, that character wears a very similar sort of outfit. The pants are almost identical. The detail where the suspenders clip to the belt, the waist of the pants I should say, is also very nicely done. You can see the texturing is great. One looks like a fabric, one looks like a leather or something like that. And the Doom Patrol communicator is on the belt as well, and it does have the Doom Patrol logo on there. It is difficult to see though, especially with that hand in the way, but it is very well done. A nice metallic sheen to it, really looks fantastic. All the way around the back of the character, you can see the upper body is very nicely detailed. I like how his shirt is loose. It doesn't look like it's hugging his body. It's nicely done, and again, it looks textured like a cotton or soft sort of fabric, which brings us to the hands, which are bandaged and fantastically detailed. There is an off-white color to them, almost a sepia sort of tone, and the wrappings are well done. They look a little loose, not super tight, as I think bandages of this sort would on both hands. Every finger on both hand is sculpted, going all the way up to the head sculpt, and I also have to say I love the turtleneck. It's cool to have a character, a hero who wears a turtleneck like that. But the head sculpt is perfect. It's simple, but it's spot on. He looks like a mummy, basically. There's very little to no detail of his face, but what is there is easy to make out. You can tell the bridge of his nose. There's a definition where his mouth would be, where his eyes would be. He also has the bandages behind the head, sort of, I guess they're supposed to be blowing away. I'm not so crazy about that, but they do look good. For the most part, very nicely done. I do like him, but there are some negatives. Which brings us to the bad. First off, I'm not crazy about the pose. I think he's supposed to look as though he is dancing with his negative self, and that's all well and good. I'm pretty sure they took that out of a panel from one of the books, but it's hard to interpret when he's just a standalone figure like this. Also, the wrappings on his head, the pieces blowing in the wind behind him, I suppose. Not crazy about that either. I would have liked them to be draped over his shoulder instead of sticking straight out like that. It just looks sort of weird, like he's moving, he's got this motion to him that I just don't understand with the way it is. Finally, the hands. You really want to watch out for those. Mine are okay for the most part. I think they're a nice detail to have. It's just mine are mangled a little bit on the left hand, so that's a physically wrong thing with just my figure. Finally, the ugly. You really want to watch out for the fingers on both hands, like I said. If you can check before you purchase, I'd highly recommend doing so. Also, watch those bandages blowing behind the head. Very, very fragile. overall, he is a very good figure. He is slightly above average. I want to like him more simply because I'm not crazy about that pose, as I said, and the bandages bother me a little bit too. He just looks sort of out of place. I think an action pose really would have helped, but the detailing, the sculpting, the paint job, the look of the character is spot on. It's a really nice guy to add to your collection, especially if you're a fan of the Doom Patrol, and we do get every member of that team, which I think is great. Well, the core members anyway. You also have Bumblebee and Beast Boy in there as well if you choose to add them to your lineup of figures. I myself really enjoy having just the trio up there of Elastigirl, Robot Man, and Negative Man as the Doom Patrol. Bumblebee, of course, there is by default, but it's really nice to have him. I really like him. I recommend him, like I said, if you're a fan, though I do realize he is not for everyone. But I really do like Negative Man, and I hope you've really liked my review, the first one of 2015, with my brand new webcam here. Please stay tuned for a quick teaser trailer of the next figure in the Eaglemoss collection, one of only 4 remaining in the regular series here. So we're almost done, everybody. It's sort of a sad day, but one I'm looking forward to bringing you, a character that I'm sort of torn on. We'll talk a little bit more about her next time. Stay tuned for that quick teaser. As always, I am your host, the Monkey Boy, aka Jay to his friends. Thanks for watching.